Listen closely, because this is the truth they don't want you to know. Psalm 34:18. The Lord is close to the broken-hearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. There is a weight that settles in the heart of the wounded, an ache that lingers long after the betrayal has passed, a silent sorrow known only to those who have loved deeply and been repaid with cruelty. The human soul is fragile, yet astonishingly resilient. It carries the bruises of deceit, the scars of abandonment, and the quiet torment of unanswered injustice. But what if I told you that your pain has not gone unnoticed? What if, in the unseen realm, justice is already at work? God is not blind to suffering. He is not indifferent to the cries of those who have been wronged. The scriptures remind us, do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Galatians 6:7. This is not a suggestion, it is a divine law, unbreakable and absolute. Every action, every word spoken in malice, every deception woven in darkness, none of it escapes the gaze of the Almighty. There are those who have inflicted pain upon you, believing themselves untouchable, thinking that their cruelty will remain without consequence, but they are mistaken. Have you ever noticed how, despite their apparent success, an uneasiness clings to those who have wronged others? How their lives, on the surface polished and prosperous, begin to show cracks? Have you ever witnessed someone who once held power over you begin to stumble, their own choices returning to haunt them like a shadow that refuses to be cast away? This is not coincidence. It is not random misfortune. It is divine justice unfolding, a process so intricate, so exact, that no one escapes its reach. God's justice does not always come as we expect, and it does not always arrive in a thunderous display of wrath. Sometimes it is a quiet unraveling, slow, deliberate, unstoppable. The very things they once took pride in begin to slip through their fingers. The people they manipulated turn away. The peace they once claimed to have is replaced by an inner torment they cannot name. The darkness they cast upon you begins to consume them instead. This is the nature of God's justice. It does not rush, it does not falter. It moves with precision, ensuring that every wound inflicted is accounted for, that every tear shed is weighed. Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. Romans 12:19. He does not forget. He does not ignore. He acts in ways beyond our understanding, bringing resolution in His perfect time. But here is where faith is tested. Can you trust that He is working even when you cannot see it? Can you let go of the need to witness their downfall and instead rest in the certainty that God is dealing with them even now? Justice is not ours to deliver. It belongs to the one who sees all, who judges righteously, who repays according to His divine wisdom. You may wonder, but why does it take so long? Why does God not strike them down immediately? Because He is both just and merciful. Just as He has offered you redemption, He offers them the opportunity to repent. Sometimes the delay in their downfall is not a sign of their escape. It is an invitation from God for them to change. But if they refuse, if they persist in their ways, if they mock justice and believe themselves exempt from consequence, their reckoning will be unavoidable. You need not concern yourself with when or how. Your role is not to stand as a witness to their suffering, but to move forward, to heal, to trust, to believe that the burdens they placed upon you will not go unaccounted for. Do not let bitterness chain you to their fate. Let them go and allow God to work, for He is dealing with them in ways you cannot yet perceive. And now, my friend, how do you know that God is at work? How can you discern the subtle, undeniable signs that justice is unfolding? If you have ever felt that unseen forces were shifting the course of events, that strange and unexplainable occurrences were taking place in the lives of those who wronged you, then pay close attention. Here are 10 signs that God is dealing with those who hurt you. Their peace begins to crumble. There is a peculiar thing about guilt. It does not rest. It does not sleep. It does not die a quiet death in the heart of the wicked. It lingers. It festers. It whispers in the silence when the world has quieted down. The person who hurt you may walk with their head held high. They may laugh as if they are untouchable. They may even convince themselves that they have moved on without consequence. But beneath the surface, a storm brews. When God begins to deal with someone, He does not always strip them of their wealth or status first. He strips them of their peace. What once came easily to them, joy, satisfaction, confidence, suddenly becomes foreign. They wake up at night with an unshakable weight pressing upon their chest. The words they spoke to you, the betrayal they inflicted, the pain they caused. It all begins to return, like echoes of their own conscience growing louder with every passing day. There is no peace, says the Lord, for the wicked. Isaiah 48:22. This is not merely a metaphor, it is a spiritual law. The one who has inflicted pain upon another cannot escape the invisible consequences of their actions. They may still smile in public, they may post pictures of their success, they may continue in their ways as if nothing has changed, but when they are alone, when there is no audience, no distractions, the silence becomes deafening. You may not see their suffering, but they feel it. Every small failure begins to weigh heavier. Every minor inconvenience is magnified. Their ability to enjoy life diminishes, though they cannot always explain why. They try to push it away, to drown out the gnawing guilt with noise, with distractions, with indulgence. But it is always there, waiting for them. That inner restlessness is not by accident, it is by design. Have you ever noticed how people who have wronged others become increasingly irritable? How they lash out for no reason? How they seem to be fighting an invisible battle? That is because the weight of their actions has begun to press down upon them. It is not you who is punishing them. It is the spiritual law of justice at work. They may not even realize what is happening at first. They may assume they are simply stressed, that life has become difficult for reasons unrelated to their past actions. But deep down they know. The mind may try to suppress the truth, but the soul remembers. The damage they inflicted on you has now become their burden to bear, and so you will notice it. Subtle at first, then undeniable. The glow in their eyes dims, the confidence in their voice weakens, the joy they once flaunted begins to look forced. This is where it begins, when God starts to take their peace, shaking them from within before anything else crumbles around them. They lose the very things they took pride in. 500 words. Pride is a dangerous foundation to build upon. The person who wronged you may have once carried themselves with an air of invincibility. They reveled in their power, their influence, their ability to manipulate or hurt without consequence. Their arrogance convinced them they were untouchable, that they could move through life trampling others without ever facing the weight of their own actions. But when God begins to deal with them, one of the first things He does is strip them of the very things they took pride in. Have you ever seen someone who once seemed so secure suddenly begin to lose control? The job they flaunted begins to slip from their fingers. The relationships they cherished start to deteriorate. The wealth they held onto so tightly seems to dwindle in unexpected ways. It does not always happen suddenly, but the pattern is undeniable. What once brought them confidence now becomes their greatest source of insecurity. This is no accident. This is the hand of divine justice at work. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will exalt you. James 4:10. But those who refuse to humble themselves are brought low by force. God does not allow the proud to stand forever. What they used to look down on others, what they used to harm, manipulate, or boast about, is the very thing that is taken from them. Imagine someone who always prided themselves on their friendships, their ability to control the people around them, their charm and social influence. When God moves, they suddenly find themselves alone. The people who once flocked to them begin to turn away. They are left speaking to shadows, wondering where their power went. This is not chance, it is justice. Or consider the one who used money as their weapon. They looked down on others, used their wealth to control, and believed their possessions defined their worth. Slowly but surely, that wealth begins to fade. Not always in an obvious way, but through unexpected setbacks, failures, and financial burdens they never anticipated. Because God will not allow someone to build their life on cruelty without shaking the very foundation they stand upon. Sometimes the loss is more personal. Their health begins to suffer. Their confidence is shattered. The identity they crafted for themselves begins to collapse. They no longer recognize the person in the mirror, because the things they once defined themselves by are slipping away. At first, they will resist. They will fight against it, blaming circumstances, blaming others, refusing to see the truth. But eventually they must come to terms with it. What they took pride in, what they believed would never fail them, has now become their greatest downfall. Because no one mocks justice and walks away unchanged, people begin to distance themselves from them. There is a certain energy that follows those who have inflicted harm on others. At first they move through life with ease, surrounded by people admired, respected, or even feared. They believe their influence is unshakable, that their ability to manipulate, control, or deceive will always serve them well. But when God begins to deal with them, something strange happens. People begin to distance themselves. It does not always happen in dramatic ways. Sometimes it begins with a shift in relationships. Friends who once defended them suddenly feel uneasy in their presence. The people who once admired them now sense something is off. They become an island, slowly abandoned, left to sit with the weight of their own actions. This is how divine justice works. Do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good morals. 1 Corinthians 15:33. God removes those who are undeserving of the loyalty of others. The person who once stood in a crowd suddenly finds themselves alone. At first they may dismiss it as coincidence. They may tell themselves that people are simply changing, that relationships naturally drift apart. But deep down they know. They sense the shift. They begin to wonder why their once loyal companions are no longer answering their calls, why the invitations have stopped, why the influence they once had is now met with disinterest or even disdain. This is not random. It is a spiritual response to their own actions. There is a weight that follows those who have mistreated others, a presence that makes people uncomfortable, that pushes them away. No one wants to remain close to a sinking ship. And when someone has built their life on mistreatment, that ship will sink. You may notice how the very people they once trusted begin to betray them. Those who once cheered them on now whisper behind their backs. The alliances they relied upon crumble. The protection they once enjoyed disappears. They begin to feel the same isolation that they once forced others to endure. It is in this solitude that they are forced to face the truth. Without distractions, without a crowd to validate them, they must sit in the silence they once feared. And in that silence, they are left with nothing but their own conscience, a conscience that no longer allows them to run. 4. Their reputation begins to suffer. A person's reputation is like a delicate thread, strong when woven together, but easily unraveled by the weight of their own actions. For those who have caused pain, deceived, or manipulated, their power often lies in how they are perceived by others. They craft an image of strength, of control, of untouchability. But when God begins to deal with them, the first cracks appear in the foundation of their reputation. At first it is subtle. The whispers start quietly. The doubts begin to surface in the minds of those who once trusted them. Their name, once spoken with admiration or fear, now carries a different weight. The people who once defended them hesitate. The trust they once commanded weakens. This is not mere coincidence. It is divine justice in motion. For whatever is hidden is meant to be disclosed, and whatever is concealed is meant to be brought out into the open. Mark 4:22. Those who live by deception believe their actions will remain buried, unseen, forgotten. But God has a way of revealing what was done in the dark. What was once hidden begins to surface. The mask they wore so confidently starts to slip. Have you ever noticed how, over time, people's true nature always emerges? How those who build their lives on lies eventually expose themselves? Perhaps they begin to contradict their own stories. Perhaps someone they wronged finally speaks up. Perhaps their own arrogance makes them careless. Whatever the cause, the truth starts to seep through the cracks, and people begin to take notice. You may see it in how they interact with others. The once charismatic and confident figure now appears nervous, defensive, or insecure. They sense the shift. They feel the eyes on them, and they know, though they may never admit it, that the image they built is beginning to collapse. The worst part? They cannot control it. People who once trusted them begin to see the inconsistencies. Questions arise, doubts grow. The very thing they relied upon, their carefully crafted reputation, now becomes their greatest weakness, and the damage spreads faster than they can contain it. At first, they will fight back. They may attempt to manipulate the narrative, to control the damage, to silence those who dare to question them. But it will not work, because when God is the one unraveling their reputation, no amount of deception can restore it. It is not always loud. Sometimes it is a slow decline. Doors that once opened for them now remain shut. Conversations that once included them now continue without them. Their influence weakens. Their voice loses its weight. They begin to fade, not because someone is actively working against them, but because their own actions have come back to haunt them. Have you ever seen someone who once carried power in a room suddenly lose their ability to command attention? It is as if the authority they once had simply vanished. This is not random. This is the silent judgment that falls upon those who misuse their position. And so, the process continues. Their reputation, the thing they held so tightly, the thing they depended on, becomes the very thing that destroys them. They face repeated setbacks and failures. There was a time when everything seemed to work in their favor. The doors they knocked on opened. The opportunities they sought came with ease. They walked through life as if fortune itself bent to their will. But when God begins to deal with those who have wronged others, one of the first things that happens is that success no longer comes so easily. At first, they might dismiss it as a minor inconvenience, a deal that didn't go through, a goal that slipped just out of reach, a small failure they could shake off. But then it happens again and again. No matter what they do, things don't seem to work out anymore. The plans they confidently set in motion begin to collapse before they can bring them to completion. The Lord makes firm the steps of the one who delights in him. Though he may stumble, he will not fall, for the Lord upholds him with his hand. Psalm 37, 23, 24, 24. But those who do not walk in righteousness stumble without being upheld. Their once effortless success turns into a battlefield where every step forward is met with resistance. They begin to realize that their charm, their influence, their ability to manipulate circumstances, none of it works like it used to. The job opportunity they were counting on falls through. The promotion they expected goes to someone else. The people they relied on for support withdraw. One by one, their plans unravel, and they are left standing in the ruins of their own ambition. You may notice their frustration. The arrogance they once carried turns into impatience. Their confidence turns into anxiety. The world that once seemed to cooperate with them now feels hostile, unpredictable, out of their control. They may lash out, blaming others, blaming circumstances, refusing to see the truth. They are no longer walking in favor. They will try harder. They will push against the current. They will do everything in their power to regain the control they once had. But the more they push, the more resistance they face. Because this is not an ordinary string of bad luck. This is divine intervention. And deep down, they know it. They feel the shift. They feel the weight of the wrongs they have committed catching up to them. No longer do they move freely. Now they are trapped in a cycle of struggle that they cannot escape. Their relationships begin to fall apart. For a long time, they took comfort in the people around them. They surrounded themselves with those who validated them, defended them, and gave them a sense of security. They thrived on the approval of others, believing that as long as they had people on their side, they would remain untouchable. But when God begins to deal with them, the very relationships they depended on start to break apart. It starts small, a misunderstanding, a shift in tone. A friend who used to always be there suddenly grows distant. The trust they took for granted begins to erode. And then it spreads. The people who once stood beside them start to question their loyalty. Arguments arise where there were once agreements. Resentments begin to surface. The unity they once enjoyed turns into division. The relationships they once controlled start to slip from their grasp. The wicked flee, though no one pursues, but the righteous are as bold as a lion. Proverbs 28:01. Their paranoia grows. They sense that those around them are no longer as devoted as they used to be. They become defensive, suspicious, desperate to hold on to the connections that once seemed unbreakable. They may try to repair the damage. They may try to manipulate, to charm, to persuade. But it does not work, because God is severing the ties that held them together. Friends betray them, family members pull away, romantic relationships deteriorate. They begin to experience the very loneliness they once inflicted on others. One by one, the people they depended on disappear, and they are left standing in the wreckage of their broken connections. They start to feel the pain they inflicted on others. There is an undeniable law in the universe, woven into the very fabric of existence. What you give, you receive. Those who cause pain often believe they are immune from experiencing it themselves. They walk away from the damage they have done, convinced that time will erase their actions, that the wounds they inflicted will remain on others while they continue forward, untouched. But when God begins to deal with them, the pain they once caused begins to return to them, measured, precise, and inescapable. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows, Galatians 6:7. At first they may not recognize it. They may think it is just a rough patch, a series of unfortunate events, a season of difficulty. But as time passes, it becomes clear the very suffering they once inflicted has now become their own burden. If they betrayed someone's trust, they will experience betrayal in a way they never imagined. If they humiliated someone, they will find themselves in a position of shame and disgrace. If they manipulated others for their gain, they will encounter people who deceive and exploit them. Their own actions become their greatest teacher. It is not always immediate. Sometimes years pass before it happens, but it does happen. Slowly, steadily, they begin to feel what it is like to be on the receiving end of their own cruelty. And what is most haunting is this: they will remember. They will remember the people they hurt. They will recall the faces, the words, the moments they dismissed so easily. And suddenly, it will all make sense. The pain they once overlooked, the suffering they ignored. Now it is their reality. At first they will try to justify it. They will tell themselves they don't deserve this. They will search for a reason, any reason, that explains why things are falling apart. But in the silence, in the moments when they are alone, they will know this is what they put others through. This is the weight they forced others to carry, and now it is their turn to bear it. They are haunted by their conscience. There are wounds that cannot be seen, pains that do not manifest in the body, but in the depths of the soul. Guilt is one of the heaviest burdens a person can carry, and when God begins to deal with those who have inflicted harm, one of the first places he strikes is their conscience. The wicked are like the tossing sea, which cannot rest, whose waves cast up mire and mud. Isaiah 57:20. They may not show it. They may pretend that everything is fine, but in the quiet moments when there is no audience to perform for, their past begins to speak. They start remembering things they tried to forget. A word spoken in anger, a moment of cruelty, a decision they justified at the time, but now wish they could undo. The faces of the people they hurt appear in their thoughts unexpectedly. The past no longer feels distant. It is alive, present, relentless. At night, sleep no longer comes easily. Their mind replays old conversations, past betrayals, the things they thought they had left behind. But the past does not stay buried forever. They try to silence it. They keep themselves busy. They chase distractions. But nothing works. Because this is not just ordinary guilt. This is divine conviction. The very things they took pride in now bring them no joy. The victories they celebrated feel hollow. They begin to wonder, what if I was wrong? What if I can never undo the damage I caused? And perhaps the worst part, they cannot escape themselves. No matter where they go, no matter how far they run, their conscience follows them. It speaks louder in the silence, heavier in the darkness, unshakable in the stillness of the night. They begin to feel something they never thought they would experience. Remorse, and with it the terrifying realization that some things cannot be undone. Opportunities close for them unexpectedly. There is a moment in every person's life when they realize they are no longer walking in favor. For those who have wronged others and carried on as if they would never face consequences, this moment comes with undeniable force. The doors that once opened so easily begin to shut. The opportunities they assumed were guaranteed suddenly vanish. The path they confidently walked on turns into an unrecognizable landscape of closed doors and missed chances. At first they will dismiss it. They will tell themselves it is just bad timing, a temporary setback, nothing more than an unfortunate coincidence. But as time passes, they begin to see a pattern, a series of events that no longer work in their favor. The promotion they were certain they would get is given to someone else. The connections they depended on suddenly lose interest. The plans they spent years building fall apart without explanation. For the Lord Almighty has purposed, and who can thwart him? His hand is stretched out, and who can turn it back? Isaiah 14:27. They do not yet understand that this is not random. This is divine intervention. Have you ever watched someone who once seemed unstoppable suddenly struggle at every turn? Have you ever watched someone who once seemed unstoppable suddenly struggle at every turn? Their confidence begins to waver, their certainty replaced by doubt. The deals that once flowed in effortlessly now come with resistance. No matter how much effort they put in, something always seems to go wrong. This is how divine justice operates. Not always in dramatic, visible destruction, but in subtle, relentless frustration. Their success is no longer their own to command. They begin to wonder, why is this happening? Why can't I catch a break? Because God is blocking their way. There was a time when they moved freely, untouched by consequence. They believed they could shape their own destiny, manipulate people and situations to their advantage. But now, every step forward feels like walking against an invisible force. They may try to force things to happen. They may work harder, scheme smarter, push stronger, but nothing changes. Because when God closes a door, no amount of effort can pry it open again. And in the quiet moments, when they sit in the wreckage of their failed plans, they begin to wonder, could it be that I am facing the consequences of what I have done? But by then, it is too late. The season of favor is gone. The opportunities they once took for granted are no longer theirs to claim. They reach out, but it's too late. One of the most painful realizations a person can experience is knowing that they waited too long to make things right. For so long, they dismissed the pain they caused. They ignored the damage they inflicted. They assumed they would always have time to fix it, to apologize, to repair what was broken. But when God begins to deal with them, they finally see what they refused to acknowledge for years. And by the time they do, the chance to make amends is gone. Then they will call to me, but I will not answer. They will look for me, but will not find me. Proverbs 1:28. This is the harshest lesson of all. Not every wound can be undone. Not every relationship can be restored. Not every door that was shut will open again. They reach out to the people they once dismissed, but those people have moved on. The friendships they took for granted have faded. The love they betrayed has turned cold. They send messages that go unanswered. They attempt to rekindle relationships that are beyond saving. They try to fix what they once destroyed, but the pieces no longer fit together. And in that moment, they feel the weight of everything they lost. The arrogance that once kept them from apologizing turns into regret. The excuses they used to justify their actions now sound hollow. They finally understand what they should have known all along. Some losses are permanent. For years, they believed they could control the outcome. They thought they could choose when to make things right, but they forgot one crucial truth. Time does not wait. The people they hurt found healing elsewhere. The hearts they broke learned to beat without them. The damage they caused became a lesson for others, not an open wound waiting to be repaired. And now, when they are finally ready to change, they stand alone. This is what divine justice looks like. Not always destruction, not always public humiliation, but something far worse. The realization that they had every chance to do the right thing, and they wasted them all. There is a moment in every person's life when they must face the weight of their actions. Some recognize it early, humbling themselves, seeking forgiveness, and changing their ways before it is too late. But others, the ones who believe they are untouchable, the ones who walk through life causing pain without a second thought, they are the ones who learn the hardest way possible. God's justice is not loud. It is not always immediate, but it is certain. The pain they caused returns to them. The peace they stole from others becomes their own torment. The security they once had crumbles beneath their feet. You may not always see it happening. You may wonder if they have escaped consequence, if they will ever truly feel what they put you through. But rest assured, no one walks away unchanged. The Lord is a God of justice. Blessed are all who wait for him. Isaiah 30:18. Your role is not to seek vengeance. Your purpose is not to wait in bitterness for their downfall. Your purpose is to heal, to move forward, to trust that God is handling what you cannot. Because when God deals with those who have wronged you, he does it in ways that no human hand could orchestrate. The suffering they inflicted finds its way back to them. Their world unravels piece by piece, and by the time they realize what they have done, it is too late. So, release the burden, let go of the anger. You do not need to prove anything. You do not need to wait for the day they regret their actions, because that day will come, and when it does, you will already be far ahead, living in the peace and favor that they once took for granted,